Today, a courtroom confrontation went viral as Jasmine Crockett faced off against Mark Kelly, and what happened next left everyone stunned. From sharp takedowns to explosive revelations, this moment is rewriting the rules of political accountability. Watch closely, because in just seconds, the balance of power shifted completely. The courtroom was thick with tension, every eye fixed on the unfolding drama as Mark Kelly, the decorated astronaut-turned-senator, faced an unprecedented legal storm. What had begun as a routine military oversight hearing had exploded into a full-blown spectacle, sending shockwaves through both political and military circles. Reporters whispered in the back rows, cameras zoomed on every subtle twitch of Kelly's expression, and social media lit up as clips of the tense exchange circulated almost instantly. Nobody had anticipated that a routine court-martial review could turn into a potential, career-ending calamity in such a short span of time. Kelly, known for his calm demeanor under pressure, found himself navigating a minefield of accusations and procedural scrutiny. The charges, though technical, carried significant political weight, leaving him in a precarious position. The bombshell came when an internal memorandum, previously sealed, surfaced publicly, revealing actions that directly contradicted statements Kelly had made during closed sessions. The document, a meticulous timeline of events, left very little room for interpretation. Legal experts watching the session live were stunned, some shaking their heads at the apparent oversight, others marveling at the swift unraveling of what had once seemed a secure position. The senators present, initially reserved, couldn't help but react visibly. The tension in the room was palpable as Kelly attempted to address each point with precision, referencing logs, emails, and prior testimonies. Yet, each rebuttal seemed to be met with further scrutiny, as if the walls themselves had decided to close in. Observers noted the subtle changes in his body language, slightly clenched fists, a tightened jaw, a faint but telling flicker of panic in his eyes. Analysts on major news networks immediately began dissecting every frame, predicting not just the outcome of the hearing, but the ripple effects on his political career and public reputation. Outside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. Protesters and supporters alike gathered, holding signs that reflected the growing divide. Hashtags started trending within minutes, turning the moment into a viral storm before the session even concluded. Clips of Kelly's tense exchanges with the presiding judge, the hushed murmurs in the courtroom, and the document that had just gone public were shared, commented on, and dissected in real time. News outlets scrambled to verify details while political commentators debated the potential fallout. In a matter of hours, what was intended to be a contained legal proceeding became a global spectacle, illustrating the volatile intersection of law, politics, and public perception. As the questioning intensified, Kelly's responses, once measured and confident, began to falter. Subtle inconsistencies, perhaps overlooked earlier, were now magnified under the relentless pressure of live scrutiny. The presiding judge, maintaining an almost unshakable composure, probed each answer with a meticulous eye, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. Every phrase, every pause, seemed to carry enormous weight, as if the very integrity of his career rested on each syllable. Legal analysts noted that rarely had a seasoned figure been cornered so efficiently. With the combination of documentary evidence, procedural authority, and political timing creating a near-perfect storm, by mid-morning, it became increasingly evident that Kelly's position was untenable. Advisors huddled behind closed doors, debating strategy, trying to anticipate the next line of questioning. The pressure was mounting not only inside the courtroom, but across the political landscape. Governors, senators, and influential figures monitored the situation closely, recognizing that the outcome could set a precedent, affect pending legislation, and shift public trust. Every movement, every reaction was under the microscope. As Kelly's defense team attempted to steer the narrative, it became clear that the momentum was slipping. Public opinion, amplified by relentless media coverage, began tilting decisively in an extraordinary twist. The final exchange before the mid-session recess revealed a startling admission from Kelly, one that few had predicted. It was not an outright confession, but a concession that validated the concerns raised in the leaked memorandum. The courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath as whispers circulated and camera lenses focused with renewed intensity. Analysts immediately recognized the significance. In political terms, this admission could not be understated. The ramifications for Kelly's career, both as a public servant and a symbol of integrity, were immense. As the session resumed, the mood had shifted. What had started as a routine hearing had transformed into a narrative-defining moment. Kelly's attempts to reclaim control were meticulous, yet the momentum had already shifted. Observers noted the calculated yet desperate effort to frame his responses in a favorable light. But the evidence, the public scrutiny, and the viral nature of the revelations had already created a tipping point. Political pundits across networks began framing the story as a career-altering crisis, one that would be dissected in detail for months to come. The courtroom reconvened, the air thick with anticipation as everyone waited to see how Kelly would respond to the revelations that had just surfaced. Cameras clicked incessantly, capturing every micro-expression, every slight gesture that hinted at his state of mind. The once composed senator now appeared visibly strained, a subtle tension in his shoulders and a faint tremor in his voice betraying the immense pressure weighing on him. Every second that passed seemed to magnify the consequences of the prior admission, turning what had started as a standard procedure into a spectacle of political and personal stakes. Kelly's legal scheme scrambled to regain some semblance of control. They presented additional documents, hoping to contextualize the points raised by the leaked memorandum. Each explanation, each reference to past procedures, was delivered with precision. Yet the scrutiny from the presiding judge and the panel of military experts was unrelenting. Observers noted that the carefully orchestrated defense strategy was being tested to its limits, as every word uttered seemed to prompt further questioning rather than resolve any doubts. The tension was almost palpable, radiating out into the press gallery where reporters furiously typed updates, live-streamed reactions, and speculated on the potential fallout outside the courtroom. The story had already taken on a life of its own. Clips of Kelly's tense exchange with the judge and the moment the memorandum was revealed circulated on social media, amassing millions of views within minutes. Political analysts dissected his every word, while opinion pieces speculated on whether this event could effectively end his political aspirations. The narrative was no longer confined to the walls of the courthouse. It was now a viral conversation spanning every platform, from Twitter threads to YouTube breakdowns, drawing in viewers eager to witness what some were calling a historical unraveling in real time. Meanwhile, Kelly attempted to steady the narrative by highlighting his past achievements, his record of service, and the intentions behind his prior statements. He spoke of dedication, duty, and public responsibility, trying to frame the situation as a technical miscommunication rather than a substantive lapse. Yet the momentum had shifted. Public sentiment, heavily influenced by the viral clips and expert commentary, leaned increasingly toward skepticism. The presiding judge, maintaining an unwavering focus, asked pointed follow-up questions that exposed lingering ambiguities and inconsistencies, each query placing further pressure on Kelly's responses. Political commentators noted that rarely had a figure so experienced in public service faced such a sudden, high-stakes challenge under live scrutiny. The combination of detailed evidence, precise timing, and the unrelenting attention of both the media and the public created a scenario few could have anticipated. Kelly's attempts to redirect attention toward his broader record met with limited success. The focus remained squarely on the specific discrepancies highlighted in the memorandum. It became clear that even small missteps could be amplified, Each word weighed against a backdrop of intense public and media observation as the session wore on. The atmosphere inside the courtroom grew increasingly charged. Kelly's aides exchanged hurried whispers, scribbling notes and adjusting talking points on the fly. The pressure was mounting not just for Kelly personally, but for the wider political landscape. Senators, advisors, and military officials watched closely, understanding that the outcome could have long-term ramifications for both governance and public perception. Analysts pointed out that in situations like these, the court of public opinion often moves faster than the legal proceedings themselves, a factor that had already begun to shape the narrative around Kelly's case. Then came the moment that would dominate headlines: a sharp, pointed question from the presiding judge, aimed directly at a specific aspect of the memorandum. Kelly paused, gathering his thoughts, visibly aware that every second was being recorded, streamed, and analyzed. The silence in the room was almost tangible, the kind of tension that grips both courtroom and audience alike. When Kelly finally responded, his words were careful, measured, and technically correct, but the weight of the publicized document behind him made each phrase seem insufficient to quell the rising storm. Social media erupted immediately. Clips of the exchange were shared, dissected, and debated in real time, with viewers highlighting both Kelly's composure and the undeniable pressure he faced. Hashtags related to the hearing trended within hours, while political commentators on live streams debated whether the senator could recover from such a highly publicized scrutiny. Even allies expressed concern, recognizing that the combination of evidence, public reaction, and the relentless attention of media outlets made this a pivotal moment in Kelly's career. As the afternoon progressed, it became increasingly apparent that the narrative had shifted irrevocably. What was once a controlled defense strategy now felt like a reactive scramble, with Kelly's team attempting to mitigate the effects of the bombshell revelation rather than proactively shaping the discussion. Political insiders speculated privately about the potential for resignation, recognizing that sometimes in high-profile crises, even the most seasoned figures must make strategic concessions to preserve future influence and credibility. The session concluded with no immediate resolution, but the trajectory was unmistakable. Analysts predicted that Kelly's political future would be inextricably tied to this single explosive event, as both public opinion and media coverage had cemented its significance. Every detail, from his pauses to the phrasing of his responses, was now part of a growing archive of scrutiny that would inform commentary, debate, and voter sentiment for months to come. The courtroom was tense, almost suffocating with anticipation, as Mark Kelly faced the scrutiny that had already shaken military and political circles alike. Jasmine Crockett, poised and unwavering, leaned forward, her voice calm but sharp, cutting through the usual decorum of legal proceedings. She began outlining the critical evidence that had been meticulously gathered over the past months, a series of oversights, miscalculations, and procedural violations that many had ignored until now. Kelly's team tried to interject to steer the narrative away from the building storm, but Crockett's articulation left no room for misdirection. Every objection, every whispered protest was met with facts laid bare and timing executed flawlessly. The media cameras captured every micro-expression, Kelly's frustration building with each passing minute, his attempts at composure slowly eroding under the weight of Crockett's relentless scrutiny. Her delivery wasn't just about pointing out errors. It was about highlighting accountability in a system that often shielded high-ranking officials from consequences. Every point she made was tied to documented incidents, memos, and first-hand accounts. The room shifted in energy. What had begun as a routine review transformed into a spectacle of political and procedural mastery. Kelly, known for his composure under pressure, visibly stiffened as the impact of Crockett's revelations took hold. Reporters whispered to each other, aware that the live feed might be recording one of the most dramatic courtroom moments of the year. Crockett didn't rely on theatrics. Her power came from precision, clarity, and the ability to anticipate counterarguments before they were even spoken. It was a masterclass in legal strategy and political timing rolled into one by mid-morning. The atmosphere had shifted entirely. Those who had doubted Crockett's capacity to handle such high-profile confrontations were now silently recalculating. Kelly's team, while competent, seemed reactive rather than proactive, constantly playing catch-up. The public statements he had prepared were rendered almost irrelevant in the face of real-time evidence being dissected point by point. Social media notifications buzzed relentlessly as clips of the exchange began leaking, highlighting key moments where Crockett had effectively neutralized Kelly's defenses in seconds as the hearing progressed. The subtle power dynamics became undeniable. Crockett's calm authority contrasted sharply with Kelly's increasingly strained composure. Each cross-examination, each question she posed, was met with silence or hesitant responses. The courtroom itself felt smaller, the tension almost tangible, as the public realized that this wasn't just a procedural hiccup, it was a turning point with far-reaching implications for military oversight, political accountability, and Kelly's own career trajectory. Within 20 minutes, the bombshell was clear. The trajectory of the case had shifted irreversibly. Kelly, who had walked in with confidence, now faced a reality he hadn't fully anticipated. The detailed, well-sourced exposition presented by Crockett left an impression not just on the judges, but on every observer following the proceedings. Analysts immediately began speculating. Could this lead to a forced resignation? Was the credibility of a decorated officer finally being questioned on a scale that no press release could counteract? Every move was scrutinized, every response dissected by pundits and political commentators alike. The energy in the room was electric. Crockett's ability to maintain composure, stick to facts, and deliver her points with impeccable timing created a domino effect. Kelly's responses grew shorter, more measured, revealing cracks in his confidence. Witnesses, allies, and even casual observers noted the dramatic shift in tone. The narrative had been commandeered, redirected from a predictable hearing to an unprecedented public reckoning. By the time the session neared a pause, the consequences were already evident. Kelly's influence, his public standing, and his capacity to navigate the fallout had all taken a decisive hit. Every camera angle, every soundbite told the same story. Jasmine Crockett had shifted the entire courtroom dynamic. Observers commented that moments like these rarely happen live, rarely unfold in such a clear demonstration of skill and authority. Social media trends began to spike. News outlets scrambled for analysis, and political commentators acknowledged the clarity and force of her presentation. This was not merely about winning a case. It was about demonstrating accountability, authority, and the power of methodical, fact-driven confrontation. By the final minutes before adjournment, Kelly's demeanor had noticeably changed. The earlier confidence that had defined his entry into the courtroom was replaced by a cautious, almost defensive posture. Crockett's meticulous approach had not only highlighted the failings in Kelly's strategy, but had also projected an unambiguous signal to political and military establishments. Evasions would no longer go unchallenged. Every observer understood the implications. Mark Kelly's path forward had been fundamentally altered, and the public narrative had been decisively claimed by Jasmine Crockett. The aftermath of the courtroom confrontation was swift and unrelenting. News outlets scrambled to cover the fallout, each headline emphasizing the seismic shift that had taken place under Jasmine Crockett's scrutiny. Clips of her precise, fact-driven takedown of Mark Kelly were shared millions of times, not only across social media, but also in news, recaps, and political analysis segments. Analysts debated the unprecedented nature of what had just occurred. A senior figure's authority publicly challenged and diminished in real time. executed with a combination of legal knowledge, strategic timing, and political acumen. Kelly's team attempted to issue statements, framing the events as misinterpreted or overstated. But the viral clips told a different story. The courtroom had been their platform, yet it was Crockett who dominated every frame, every soundbite, and every angle. Observers noted the subtle but telling cues. Kelly's body language had shifted from assertive to defensive. The confident cadence of his statements replaced with carefully measured, almost hesitant responses. Every question from Crockett had peeled back a layer, revealing vulnerabilities that few had anticipated. Would be so starkly visible, political commentators quickly connected the dots. This wasn't just a courtroom drama, it was a public reckoning that threatened to alter the trajectory of Kelly's career entirely. Congressional aides, military insiders, and political strategists alike noted that the combination of real-time evidence, presentation, and Crockett's unflinching authority had created a situation from which recovery would be difficult. Within hours, speculation about forced resignation, internal investigations, and broader institutional consequences dominated headlines by mid-afternoon. The ripple effects had reached social media platforms in full force. Memes, clips, and commentary exploded, amplifying Crockett's performance and cementing her as a figure capable of navigating high-pressure scenarios with unparalleled skill. Each viral moment reinforced the message: accountability cannot be sidestepped. And careful preparation combined with sharp execution can shift even the most entrenched power dynamics. Analysts highlighted how Crockett's timing and command of facts created what some called an unassailable narrative, leaving Kelly's team struggling to respond effectively. Meanwhile, internal political circles were abuzz. Kelly's allies scrambled to assess the damage, knowing that a resignation was no longer just a possibility, was becoming a rapidly escalating inevitability. The meticulous documentation, strategic questioning, and unwavering composure displayed by Crockett had left no room for ambiguity. The public and institutional perception of authority had shifted irrevocably. The question now was not if, but when Kelly would be formally held accountable. As evening approached, the consequences began to crystallize. The court's administrative offices issued preliminary notices indicating potential disciplinary action. Kelly's public appearances became limited, and his communications team shifted into crisis mode. Every move was being analyzed against the standard set by Crockett's courtroom performance: clarity, factual precision, and commanding presence. Analysts remarked that this case would likely serve as a benchmark for political and legal confrontations for years to come, an example of how meticulous preparation and confident execution could decisively shift the balance of power by nightfall. The story had permeated every corner of the media landscape. Political pundits dissected each of Crockett's points, debating implications for military oversight, judicial accountability, and public trust in high-ranking officials. Social media commentary praised her restraint and professionalism, contrasting it with Kelly's increasingly reactive posture. The narrative was clear. Crockett had transformed what could have been a routine hearing into a defining public moment, one that reasserted the importance of integrity and transparency in positions of authority. Ultimately, the day concluded with a public acknowledgement that Mark Kelly would step down from certain official duties pending further investigation, a move seen by many as a direct consequence of Crockett's decisive intervention. Headlines the following morning emphasized the unparalleled impact of her actions, highlighting how a single, focused, and fact-driven performance could alter institutional trajectories and redefine the limits of accountability. Crockett's handling of the situation had left an indelible mark on public consciousness. She demonstrated that preparation, clarity, an unwavering commitment to truth could not only confront, but also decisively influence figures with immense power, in a landscape often dominated by narrative manipulation. This episode stood out as a testament the potency of meticulous strategy and principled engagement. By the end of this historic exchange, observers were left with a simple but profound understanding. Authority is earned. Scrutiny is essential and in the right hands. A single voice armed with facts, timing, and poise can shift the course of power itself.